Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're going deep into the concept of the deep state. But, our source material isn't like some political expose or a leaked document or anything.
No.
It's a YouTube video
Interesting.
in Polish
Okay.
with English subtitles
Okay.
featuring a hypnotist
Okay.
who is interviewing people about their experiences with this shadowy force.
Yeah, it's certainly an unusual starting point. I mean, we have to acknowledge that the hypnotist himself even says, be skeptical when you're dealing with information from hypnosis.
Right.
Memories can be fluid, they're susceptible to suggestion, so it can be hard to tell what's fact and what's fabrication.
Yeah, so we're really going head first into speculation and conspiracy theories here.
Yeah.
But, it's got to be fascinating too.
Right.
And some of the claims in this video are truly eyebrow-raising. We're talking about allegations of a global network operating in 88 countries.
Wow.
Controlling everything from media to financial systems.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a narrative that really taps into this primal fear, right?
Yeah.
This idea that there are powerful, unseen forces that are manipulating the world around us.
Exactly.
And in this video, it even suggests a connection between the deep state and non-human entities,
Right.
which is really unsettling.
It is. And for some reason, it claims that Luxembourg is the only country without a deep state presence.
Interesting.
I don't know what's up with that. I'm hooked already.
Ah.
But before we go down this rabbit hole, maybe you can give us like a working definition of deep state.
Sure, yeah. In a general sense, deep state refers to a network of individuals within a government or intelligence agencies who are wielding power and influence outside of, the official channels.
Okay.
So it's often associated with, unelected officials, career bureaucrats making decisions that kind of go against the will of the people or the elected leaders.
So sort of shadow government, like pulling the strings from behind the curtain. And according to this video, what are the methods and goals of this deep state?
Well, the video paints this picture of an organization that's really obsessed with control.
Okay.
They're masters of manipulation.
Okay.
They use the media to spread disinformation and fake news to shape public opinion.
Okay.
And they've got their fingers in the global financial system, orchestrating events to benefit their agenda.
So to accomplish all of this, they must have some pretty serious resources and technology.
Yeah, that's one of the more intriguing parts of the video.
Okay.
The subjects under hypnosis, they describe these secret meetings, coded messages, even the use of advanced technology for communication.
Really?
Some of these descriptions, they almost sound like science fiction.
Yeah. So we've laid some groundwork now, but let's zoom in on some of the specific claims from the video. One that really got me was the alleged manipulation of events like the COVID-19 pandemic and the war in Ukraine.
Yeah, that claim, it kind of lines up with a broader trend we see in a lot of conspiracy theories, where, these major global events, they get attributed to the machinations of these shadowy groups.
Yeah.
It's a way of trying to impose order and meaning on these events that can feel really chaotic and unpredictable.
Yeah, I mean, when you're faced with something as complex and frightening as a global pandemic, it is tempting to look for a simple explanation, a group to blame.
Absolutely.
But wouldn't a powerful deep state have more efficient ways of controlling things than staging these elaborate hoaxes?
That's a good point.
Yeah.
And it kind of highlights one of the inherent contradictions you see in deep state narrative.
So,
right? On one hand, you have this shadowy group that's portrayed as incredibly powerful, super influential.
Right.
But then their plans often seem, really convoluted, relying on these risky strategies that could easily unravel.
Okay, so maybe there's more to unpack here than we initially thought. What about this claim about people being in direct communication with, like, high-ranking officials?
Right.
Even the president.
Yeah.
Using coded phrases and threats.
Yeah.
I mean, that's straight out of a spy movie.
It really is.
Yeah.
And it raises some interesting questions about the nature of power and access.
Okay.
If this deep state is so pervasive, why would they need to rely on these kind of indirect ways of communicating?
Right.
Wouldn't they just have more direct ways of influencing those in power?
Unless those in power are more aware of the deep state's actions than we realize?
That's possible.
Or maybe, and I'm just spitballing here, this so-called deep state, maybe
Yeah.
it's not one big thing, but a bunch of individuals with their own agendas and ways of doing things.
That's an interesting thought. And it would definitely complicate how we understand this whole deep state thing. It makes you wonder how much control any one person or even group can really have in something as complex as global politics and finance.
Right. Okay, let's shift gears a bit and talk about another claim that really got to me.
Okay.
This one involves a supposed plot to eliminate national currencies.
Wow.
It sounds like a dystopian novel.
Yeah, it really taps into those long-standing fears about a one-world government
Right.
and a single global currency.
Yeah.
You know, it plays on this deep-seated anxiety about losing national sovereignty
Yeah.
and the potential for one central power to just control the world's economy.
But this isn't just limited to the fringes of conspiracy theories, is it? I mean, we are seeing a real trend toward digital currencies
Right,
and a more interconnected global economy.
right.
Could those legitimate developments be fueling anxieties about a deep state, even if it doesn't actually exist?
That's a really insightful observation. Yeah, it's possible that the rise of digital currencies, globalization, it's feeding into those pre-existing fears
Yeah.
about centralized control, which could lead some people to see a deep state conspiracy where, there might just be complex economic forces at play.
So how do we reconcile these legitimate trends with the more outlandish claims about, this shadowy elite manipulating the financial system for their own gain?
Yeah.
Where's the line between reasonable concern and full-blown paranoia?
That's a question that's getting harder and harder to answer
Yeah.
in our current information landscape. We're just bombarded with news opinions from so many sources. It's
Right.
hard to sift through it all and get a balanced perspective.
Yeah, it's like we're constantly walking this tightrope between healthy skepticism and falling down a rabbit hole of conspiracy theories.
Yeah.
And this doesn't make it any easier.
No, it doesn't. But maybe that's part of what makes it so valuable.
Yeah.
It forces us to confront these uncomfortable questions and to really grapple with the challenges of figuring out truth from fiction in this world, just saturated with information.
Okay, so before we get lost in the weeds of financial conspiracies,
Yeah.
let's jump to another fascinating thing in this video.
Okay.
The connection to non-human entities.
Right.
That's a pretty wild card,
Yeah.
even for a conspiracy theory.
Yeah, it's definitely one of the most unusual and challenging parts of this video to analyze. I mean, what do they even mean when they talk about these non-human entities? Are we
Yeah.
talking extraterrestrials,
Right.
demons,
Yeah.
some other kind of supernatural force?
Yeah, and how do they fit into this whole deep state narrative?
Exactly.
Are they the masterminds?
Right,
Or just another tool?
right.
The video doesn't really give clear answers.
No, it leaves a lot open to interpretation. It's possible that these references to non-human entities are symbolic,
Okay.
representing unseen forces of power and control.
Or maybe it's a reflection of anxieties about the unknown.
Yeah.
The stuff that's beyond what we understand. I mean, the deep state, it's often portrayed as operating in the shadows.
Right.
Manipulating things behind the scenes.
Right.
It's not that big of a leap to imagine supernatural beings pulling the strings, too.
That's a great point. The idea of a deep state itself already taps into this fear of the unseen,
Right.
the unaccountable.
Right.
Adding those non-human entities just amplifies the fear and mystery.
Yeah, it makes it harder to separate fact from fiction,
Right.
reality from imagination. How do you even begin to investigate claims
Yeah.
about supernatural beings influencing global events?
That's a real challenge for anyone trying to analyze these types of narratives.
Yeah.
I mean, you have to approach these claims with skepticism,
Right.
but also be willing to consider different perspectives, interpretations.
Right. We don't want to dismiss these ideas completely,
Right.
but we also don't want to get swept up in the paranormal either.
It's a tough balance.
It is a delicate balance.
And maybe that's the big lesson from this deep dive into the deep state. It reminds us that the truth is often complex, elusive,
Yeah.
and that even the most outlandish claims can have something worth thinking about.
Right.
Yeah, it's really interesting how these narratives kind of blend real-world anxieties with this supernatural stuff.
Yeah.
It's like the fear of the unknown, but it takes on a real form.
Yeah. And speaking of fears of the unknown, there's another weird thing in this video I want to talk about.
Okay.
The claim that Luxembourg is the only country without a deep state presence.
Oh, yeah.
It seems so random.
It does. It really does. It makes you wonder if, like, there's some hidden truth there or if the whole thing's made up.
I kind of think there's a hidden truth, but I'm so curious. What could make Luxembourg so unique to these hypnotized people? Is it its size, its neutrality, or maybe something more esoteric?
It is tempting to look for some, like, hidden meaning there.
Yeah.
Maybe it's because Luxembourg's this global financial center. Maybe the video's saying the deep state doesn't need to control Luxembourg directly because they already have influence through its financial institutions.
Yeah, it's interesting. It fits with the whole financial manipulation thing.
Right.
But wouldn't a powerful deep state want to control all the big financial hubs? Why leave even one kind of loose end?
Maybe it's strategic.
Okay.
By leaving Luxembourg alone, they create a sense of normalcy.
Right.
A distraction from what they're doing elsewhere.
Oh, I like that. It's like a magician, you know?
Yeah.
You focus on the hand that's moving and miss the trick happening in the other hand.
Exactly.
But let's move on to something else in the video that kind of freaked me out.
Okay.
This idea that the deep state might be targeting Poland for some reason.
Yeah, that comes up a lot in the video.
It does.
It's like Poland's at the center of this global conspiracy.
Right.
The main battleground in the fight against the deep state.
Yeah, and it gets even more intense when they talk about getting rid of national currencies,
right,
especially in Poland, like pushing for the euro as part of some, like, master plan. It makes me wonder if this is tapping into some specific Polish anxieties, you know, like historical stuff or political tensions within Poland itself.
That's a good point. It would be interesting to look into Poland's history with the European Union and the euro.
Yeah.
Maybe there are already concerns about economic control or losing their national identity that are being, like, amplified by this deep state narrative.
Yeah, because it's one thing to talk about a global conspiracy generally.
Right.
But when you tie it to specific countries and their political realities, it becomes way more serious and complex.
Absolutely. It goes from this vague, shadowy threat to something much more real and immediate.
Right.
Something that feels like it could actually affect people's lives.
And speaking of affecting people's lives, there's another part of this video we need to talk about.
Okay.
And it's maybe the most disturbing part. The stuff about children being involved.
Yeah, this is where the narrative gets really dark.
It does.
And we have to be super careful with these claims.
Right.
We're going into territory where speculation and conspiracy theories can overlap with real danger.
Yeah, the video talks about children being taken to the Vatican.
Right.
And, like, implies some kind of ritualistic abuse.
Yeah.
I mean, those are really serious accusations.
They are. And it's important to say that we can't verify any of this.
Right.
Just because we're exploring this narrative doesn't mean we believe it or agree with it.
Of course not. But even just the suggestion of that kind of activity is, like, deeply unsettling.
Of course.
The video describes in detail how these kids are supposedly smuggled across borders and subjected to, like, horrible rituals. It's hard to even listen to.
Yeah, I understand. It's normal to feel disgusted and angry hearing that stuff.
Right.
But it's important to remember these claims are coming from people under hypnosis, which is a state where people can be easily influenced and create false memories.
So we can't just ignore these claims, but we also can't take them as fact.
Right.
It's tough to know what to do, especially with something this sensitive and potentially dangerous.
It is. And this is where critical thinking is so important.
Yeah.
We need to think carefully about where these claims are coming from, if there's any bias or manipulation, and if there could be other explanations.
Right. And that brings me to another part of the video that bothered me.
Okay.
The stuff about energetic attacks. It's not really explained well, but it sounds like these hypnotized people think they can use their minds to hurt other people.
Yeah, it's this mix of paranormal stuff and conspiracy theories.
Right.
It creates this sense of unseen forces fighting for control.
It's like they're taking psychic powers and, like, weaponizing them,
Yeah.
turning them into a way to fight this deep state threat.
Exactly. It taps into this fascination with the occult, this
Yeah.
idea that there are hidden powers you can use for good or evil.
Right.
And in this deep state narrative, it's like the battle isn't just in the real world,
Right.
but also on some, like, psychic or spiritual level.
It adds another layer of complexity to this already crazy story.
Right.
But it also makes me worried. I mean, if these people really believe they have these powers, what will they do in the real world?
That's a valid concern. It's one thing to think about these ideas, like a thought experiment,
Yeah,
but it's another to actually act on them, especially if it means hurting other people.
exactly. And it makes you think about, like, delusion and the lines between fantasy and reality.
Right. It also shows how dangerous misinformation can be and the power of belief.
Yeah.
If someone really believes a certain narrative, especially one with supernatural powers or conspiracies, it can be almost impossible to change their mind.
And that's what makes this whole deep state deep dive so fascinating, but also scary.
Right.
We're exploring this world where reality itself seems like up for debate, where truth and fiction are constantly shifting.
It's a world where skepticism and critical thinking are more important than ever,
Right.
but also where we need to understand that people need meaning and simple explanations in a complicated world.
And as we go deeper into this video, I keep asking myself what to believe, what to ignore, and how to make sense of it all.
That's normal. It reminds us that we can all be influenced by stories, even if they're based on speculation and unproven things.
Okay, let's step back from the specifics of this video for a minute
Okay.
and think about the bigger picture. What does the popularity of deep state theories tell us about, like, the world today and the anxieties people are dealing with?
It's a tough question,
Yeah,
but I think it shows a growing distrust in institutions.
right.
This feeling that those in power aren't acting in the best interests of the people.
It's like there's this gap between what we're told and what people actually experience.
Right.
And when that gap gets bigger, conspiracy theories rush in to fill it.
Exactly. They offer a sense of order and control in a world that often feels chaotic and unpredictable.
Right.
And they give people someone to blame, a way to personalize complex issues and blame a shadowy group instead of dealing with, systemic problems.
So even though we can criticize this video and the claims made under hypnosis, we also need to understand the anxieties that these theories are tapping into.
Absolutely. If we want to know why people believe these things, we need to look deeper
Right.
and address the social and psychological needs that these narratives are fulfilling.
Okay, we've talked about a lot, but there's one more interesting thing in the video we haven't really explored.
Oh, yeah.
The claim that one of the hypnotized people might be part of a, resistance movement fighting back against the deep state.
Ah, the underground rebellion.
Yeah.
It's a classic in conspiracy theories.
It really adds to the spy thriller feeling of this video.
Right.
But it also makes you wonder about resistance in a world where power seems so centralized and, all-encompassing.
Right.
What does it even mean to fight back against something like the deep state?
That's a great question, and it's been explored in so many books and movies.
Yeah.
This idea of a small group of rebels taking on a powerful system is a good story, but it's also full of challenges.
Right. Because how do you fight a system that's designed to be invisible,
Right.
to work in the shadows? And what methods are okay to use when you think the enemy is so powerful and ruthless?
Those are tough questions with no easy answers. They make us think about power, resistance, and the moral gray areas that come up when you're fighting injustice.
It's like we're entering a whole new part of this deep state story.
Yeah.
Where good and evil get blurry,
Right.
and the fight for freedom becomes more secretive and underground.
And it reminds us that even within conspiracy theories, there are often competing narratives,
Right.
different groups fighting to control the story.
It's like a hall of mirrors, where each reflection distorts the image even more, making it impossible to know what's real.
Exactly. And as we try to figure out all these claims and counterclaims, it's so important to think critically and be aware of the biases and agendas that might be shaping the information we're getting.
After all this talk about resistance movements, I feel like I need a support group for people recovering from conspiracy theories.
I get it. It's a lot to take in.
It is. But before we get completely lost in this deep state maze, maybe we should try to summarize some of the main points we've learned from this weird video.
That's a good idea. Sometimes it helps to pause and look at the bigger picture before getting back into the details.
Okay, so what are some of the big themes we've seen so far?
Well, one thing that really stands out is the power of stories, especially when it comes to conspiracy theories.
Yeah.
This video tells a really compelling story that taps into people's fears about control, manipulation, and the unknown.
It's like a tapestry made up of real events, historical anxieties, and supernatural stuff.
Yeah,
And once you're caught in that web, it's hard to get out.
exactly. It reminds us that we all love good story, even if it's based on speculation and unproven claims.
And I think this video also shows how important critical thinking and media literacy are today.
Absolutely.
We're constantly bombarded with messages from everywhere, and it's getting harder and harder to tell what's true and what's not.
It's more important than ever to be aware of the biases and agendas that might be shaping the information we're getting,
Right.
and to have the skills to critically evaluate those messages.
We need to ask ourselves, who's telling this story? What are their motives? And what evidence supports their claims?
And we need to be aware of our own biases and be willing to challenge our own beliefs. It's easy to get stuck in echo chambers where we only see information that agrees with what we already think.
Right.
But if we want to really understand the world, we need to be open to different perspectives, even ones that make us uncomfortable or challenge our assumptions.
Absolutely. And I think that's one of the most valuable things we can learn from this deep dive into the deep state.
Yeah.
It reminds us that the truth is often complicated and hard to find,
Right.
and that even the craziest claims can tell us something about what people need and the anxieties that shape how we see the world.
Yeah, taking a break is it's always a good idea. I mean, it's easy to get lost in the weeds when you're dealing with a narrative this complex and layered, you know?
Yeah, for sure. Well, I'm back, and I'm ready to, I guess, try and make sense of all this. I got to say, after all that talk of like shadowy networks and coded messages and maybe even like mind control,
Yeah.
I'm looking at the world a little differently now.
Yeah, I can understand that. It's like you've been given a whole new set of lenses to view reality,
Right.
and everything just seems a little more suspicious.
Exactly. But maybe that's not a bad thing, right? Little healthy skepticism. It
Right.
could be a good thing. It helps us, question things and not just accept everything we hear.
Absolutely. It's so important to cultivate that critical mindset these days,
Yeah.
especially with information and misinformation spreading so fast.
So as we wrap up this deep dive,
Yeah.
what are some like key takeaways our listeners can, actually use in their own lives?
Well, I think one of the most important things is to remember the power of a good story. We all love stories, and those stories can really shape how we see the world, even if they're based on speculation or things that haven't been proven.
This video is a great example of that, right? I mean, it mixed real events, historical fears, even supernatural stuff
Right.
to create this really captivating story.
Mm.
But it also it shows us that it's important to take a step back and really think about those stories critically.
Absolutely.
Where did they come from? Who benefits from them? What evidence is there?
Exactly. It's about finding that balance, between being curious and being skeptical.
Right.
Being open to new ideas,
Yeah.
but also being willing to question things and challenge your own beliefs.
Yeah. And I think this video also, it really emphasizes how important it is to understand the bigger context, right?
Right.
Like where these conspiracy theories come from. We talked about, those historical anxieties specific to Poland.
Yeah.
But there are also like global things happening, like digital currencies and this more interconnected global economy
Mhm.
that are making people anxious about, losing control and centralized power.
And it's important to realize that these anxieties, they often come from real concerns, even if the explanations offered by conspiracy theories are, not quite right or even misleading.
So how do we deal with those concerns in a productive way without getting sucked into that paranoia and distrust?
Well, I think it starts with having open and honest conversations.
Okay.
We need to create spaces where people can talk about their fears and anxieties without feeling judged or dismissed.
And we need to be willing to actually listen to those concerns,
Absolutely.
even if we don't agree with the conclusions people are coming to.
Exactly. It's about recognizing that these beliefs, that they often come from this genuine desire to understand this complex and confusing world, And instead of just saying, "Oh, that's crazy" or "that's irrational,"
Right.
we can try to understand those anxieties
Right.
that are driving those beliefs.
And maybe by having those conversations, we can start to build some understanding
Right.
and find common ground, even if we don't agree on the details of, how the world works.
I think that's a really beautiful and hopeful way to approach this whole challenge.
Yeah.
It's about remembering that we're all in this together. We're all
Yeah.
trying to figure out this complex world that's constantly changing. And, we may not always agree on the answers,
Right.
but we can at least try to ask the right questions, and to approach those questions with curiosity and an open mind.
Okay. So So let's wrap up this deep state deep dive with a final thought-provoking question for our listeners.
Okay.
If, like this video suggests, there really is this shadowy network controlling the world, what does that mean for us as individuals?
Yeah.
Our ability to make our own choices and shape our own lives.
That's a really good question. And it really gets to the heart of, the anxieties that fuel these deep state narratives.
Yeah.
It makes us think about the possibility that we're not really in control.
Right.
That there are these unseen forces manipulating things.
Right.
But it also gives us a chance to think about our own role in shaping the world around us.
Yeah, if we feel powerless against this supposed deep state, what can we do? Can we become more informed, more involved in politics,
Yeah.
or maybe even take a more radical approach to challenge the way things are?
Those are all important questions to think about.
Yeah.
And there's not one right answer. But I think the most important thing is to not give up, to
Yeah.
not give in to despair or apathy. Even if we accept that there might be these powerful forces working against us, we still have a choice in how we respond.
We can choose to be informed, to be critical, and to engage with the world in a way that reflects our values.
Yeah.
And maybe in doing so, we can help create a world where these deep state stories just disappear.
Yeah, that's a great vision,
Yeah.
A world where trust and transparency replace fear and suspicion,
Right.
and where we all feel empowered to shape our own lives.
Well said.
Yeah.
Thanks for joining us on this deep state deep dive. It's been a wild ride, that's for sure.
Uh-huh.
But I think we're leaving with more to think about than to be afraid of.
And that's the real power of a good deep dive,
Yeah.
to make us question things, to see things from different perspectives, and to leave us with more questions than answers. Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep an open mind.